standing in my kitchen 3 months ago, phone in hand, staring at the devastating text from my mother. "We lost the house. Your brother's restaurant failed. We need you to sell your place and help us. Family comes first." The same parents who chose my brother Tyler over me for 28 years, who mortgaged their family home to fund his culinary dreams, while I worked 2 jobs through college. The same parents now demanding I sacrifice everything I built alone. That was the moment I finally said no. 6 months earlier, I had driven the familiar route through suburban Detroit to visit my childhood home, the same red brick colonial where I had spent 18 years feeling invisible. The autumn leaves crunched under my tires as I pulled into the driveway, already dreading another family gathering, where my accomplishments would be overshadowed by whatever grand scheme my older brother Tyler had cooked up this time. Mom and Dad were practically vibrating with excitement when I walked through the front door. Margaret, my 58-year-old mother, still dyed her hair the same shade of auburn she had worn since the 80s, and she clutched a manila folder against her chest like it contained the secrets of the universe. Robert, my 61-year-old father, wore his weekend uniform of khaki pants and a polo shirt, his graying mustache twitching with barely contained enthusiasm. "Darby, sweetheart, you have to see this," Mom gushed, leading me to the dining room table where papers were spread out like a war strategy. "Your brother has the most incredible opportunity." I set down my purse and glanced at the documents. Second mortgage papers from First National Bank. My stomach dropped as I saw the amount, $200,000. "We are investing in Tyler's future," Dad announced, proudly straightening his shoulders. "This farm-to-table concept is revolutionary. He is going to change the entire restaurant industry in Michigan." On cue, Tyler burst through the kitchen door, all 6 feet 2 inches of him, radiating the same magnetic confidence that had charmed our parents for 3 decades. His dark hair was perfectly tousled, his designer jeans and button-down shirt clearly expensive. At 30, he still carried himself like the high school quarterback he had once been when Mom and Dad never missed a single game while regularly forgetting my academic award ceremonies. Darby perfect timing. He spread architectural blueprints across the mahogany table, his wedding ring catching the light. His wife Susan had divorced him last year, but he still wore the band. "Check out these plans for Harvest Kitchen. 60-seat capacity open kitchen concept, locally sourced ingredients within a 50-mile radius." I studied the elaborate designs, my practical mind immediately calculating overhead costs and profit margins. "This looks expensive, Tyler. What about market research, competition analysis? Have you actually worked in restaurant management before?" Tyler waved his hand dismissively. "That traditional business model thinking is exactly what is wrong with the industry. This is about passion, about creating an experience. People want authenticity, connection to their food sources." Mom nodded eagerly. "The bank approved us immediately. They said our credit rating was excellent, and with the house as collateral, we qualified for the full amount." "You are putting the house at risk." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "This is where you have lived for 32 years. This is your retirement security." Dad frowned, his expression cooling. "Darby, this family has always supported each other's dreams. When you wanted to go to nursing school, we helped, however we could." I bit back the response that they had helped by letting me take out student loans while giving Tyler a brand new car for his 21st birthday. Instead, I focused on the present danger. What if the restaurant fails? 90% of new restaurants close within the first year. "It will not fail," Tyler said firmly. "I have been planning this for 3 years. I have supplier relationships, a marketing strategy, projected revenue streams that show profitability within 8 months." He handed me a glossy folder filled with charts and graphs that looked impressive, but felt suspiciously optimistic. The projected customer numbers seemed pulled from thin air, and the cost estimates appeared deliberately lowballed. "Tyler, this is your 3rd business venture," I said carefully. "The food truck company never got off the ground, and the catering business lasted 6 months. "Those were learning experiences," Mom interjected quickly. "Tyler learned so much from those setbacks. This time he knows exactly what he is doing." The familiar pattern was playing out again. Tyler's failures were reframed as education, his reckless optimism celebrated as vision, his pattern of abandoning projects when they became difficult, dismissed as strategic pivoting. I tried a different approach. Have you consulted with any restaurant industry professionals? Maybe talked to some successful restaurant owners about the challenges? Tyler's jaw tightened. I do not need some old-timer telling me what cannot be done. Innovation requires risk-taking. Mom and Dad understand that. We believe in him completely, Dad said. This is what family does. We invest in each other. As they continued discussing renovation timelines and equipment purchases, I found myself remembering all the times my own achievements had been met with polite acknowledgement, while Tyler's schemes received celebration. My promotion to head pediatric nurse practitioner at Children's Hospital had earned a congratulatory dinner at Applebee's. Tyler's announcement about the restaurant had warranted a backyard party with the extended family. The evening wore on with more detailed discussions about Tyler's vision. He described partnerships with local farms, wine tastings, featuring Michigan vineyards, cooking classes for community members. It all sounded wonderful in theory, but I kept thinking about the mortgage papers sitting on the table. As I prepared to leave, Tyler walked me to my car, his expression serious for the first time all evening. I need you to know something, Darby. This is not just about me. This restaurant is going to employ 15 people. It is going to revitalize the downtown area. Mom and Dad will be part owners, so when we start turning profit, they will have income security for life. And if it fails? It will not fail. His confidence never wavered, not even for a moment. Driving home to my modest townhouse 20 minutes away, I could not shake the feeling that I had just watched my parents sign away their future. But the next morning, Tyler called to share more exciting news. He had secured a location, a beautiful historic building that just needed minor renovations. The enthusiasm in his voice was infectious, and I found myself hoping that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. 2 weeks later, I discovered the truth that changed everything. I was helping Mom organize her financial records for tax season when I found a folder labeled College Funds tucked behind her recipe box. Inside were bank statements from an account I had never seen before, one that had been closed 5 years ago. The final withdrawal was for $50,000, dated just 3 months before Tyler's catering business launched. Mom, I said slowly, what was this account? She glanced at the papers and her face went pale. Oh, that is nothing important, just an old savings account. But I had already seen the deposit history. Regular contributions over 18 years earmarked for Darby Education Fund. $50,000 that should have paid for my nursing school money I had never known existed. You told me there was no money for college, I whispered. You said the stock market crash wiped out your investments. You made me take out $60,000 in student loans. Mom sat down heavily at the kitchen table. The catering business needed startup capital. Tyler promised to pay it back within 2 years. You used my college fund for Tyler's business without telling me. We were going to replace it, she said defensively. But then your father's hours got cut at the plant, and we had some unexpected expenses with the roof replacement. I stared at the bank statements, understanding flooding through me like ice water. Tyler's previous failures had not just cost him money. They had cost me my education fund. Money that my parents had saved specifically for my future had been sacrificed for his dreams, and I had never even been told it existed. Does Tyler know where the money came from? I asked. Mom looked away. He needed our support. Family supports family. But as I sat in my car outside their house that afternoon, I realized that in my family, support only flowed in one direction. Tyler received investment encouragement and endless second chances. I received expectations to be grateful, understanding, and self-sufficient. That was 3 months before the restaurant failed spectacularly, and 6 months before my parents would show up on my doorstep demanding I sacrifice my home to save theirs. I should have seen it coming. The first sign of trouble came in February, 3 months after Tyler's grand opening. I was working a double shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Some minor setbacks at the restaurant, but Tyler has everything under control. I did not think much of it at the time. Tyler had always been dramatic about business challenges, turning minor inconveniences into epic struggles that required family rallying. But over the next few weeks, the texts became more frequent and increasingly vague. Health department requires some additional permits. Supplier situation being resolved. Temporary cash flow adjustment needed. I offered to help review his books, but Tyler declined, insisting everything was manageable. Mom and Dad echoed his confidence whenever I called, though I noticed their conversations had developed a strained quality, like actors reciting lines they were not entirely sure they believed. The truth came crashing down on a rainy Thursday in March. I was leaving the hospital after a particularly difficult day when my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. "Is this Darby Chen?" The voice was unfamiliar, professional. "This is Darby. Who is calling?" "My name is Jessica Martinez with First National Bank. I am calling about the mortgage on property at 42 Maple Drive. We have been unable to reach Robert and Margaret Chen, and this number was listed as an emergency contact." My parents' house. Ice formed in my stomach. What kind of emergency? The mortgage payment is 67 days overdue. We sent multiple notices to the property address, but they have gone unanswered. The account is currently in default. 67 days. They had been lying to me for over 2 months. "I will have them contact you immediately," I managed. "Ma'am, I need to inform you that foreclosure proceedings will begin next week if we do not receive payment of the outstanding balance. That amount is currently $11,400, including late fees." After hanging up, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot, rain drumming against the windshield, trying to process this information. My parents had never missed a house payment in their lives. They were the type of people who paid bills the day they arrived, who maintained perfect credit scores, who viewed debt as a personal moral failing. I drove straight to their house. Dad answered the door, looking older than I had ever seen him. His usually neat mustache was unkempt, and his clothes hung loose as if he had lost weight without noticing. "Darby, what brings you by?" "The bank called me. You are 67 days behind on the mortgage." His shoulders sagged, and for the first time in my life, my father looked defeated. "Come inside." Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her hands shook slightly as she sorted through envelopes. "We tried to handle this ourselves," she said without looking up. "We did not want to worry you." "What happened to the restaurant?" Dad cleared his throat. "There were some unexpected complications." Over the next hour, the full disaster slowly emerged. Harvest Kitchen had opened to great fanfare in January, with a successful first weekend that filled Tyler with confidence. But problems had appeared almost immediately. The health department had discovered several code violations in the kitchen that Tyler had missed during renovation. Bringing everything up to standard required $25,000 in additional work. Tyler had paid by maxing out credit cards. The locally sourced ingredient model proved more expensive than anticipated. Tyler's supplier relationships were informal handshake deals with farmers who raised prices throughout the winter months. Food costs were running 40% higher than projected. The historic building Tyler had fallen in love with came with historic building problems. The heating system failed in February, requiring emergency repairs that cost $15,000. The vintage electrical system could not handle modern kitchen equipment, necessitating a complete rewiring project. Most damaging of all, Tyler had hired his friends instead of experienced restaurant staff. His bartender was his college roommate who had no food service experience. His kitchen manager was a cousin who thought cooking for family dinners qualified her for commercial food preparation. Customer reviews quickly turned negative, citing slow service, inconsistent food quality, and amateur management. "We tried to help," Mom said quietly. "Tyler kept saying he just needed a little more time, a little more money to fix the problems. We refinanced the house to get him additional funds." "How much additional funds?" "Another $50,000, Dad admitted. "We thought it would be enough to stabilize operations." But Tyler's lack of experience had made every problem worse. Instead of cutting costs and simplifying operations, he had expanded the menu and hired more untrained staff. Instead of addressing the kitchen violations systematically, he had tried quick fixes that created new problems. Instead of building customer loyalty through consistent quality, he had focused on elaborate promotional events that drained cash without generating sustainable business. "Where is Tyler now?" I asked. My parents exchanged a look that made my blood run cold. "He left for California last week," Mom said. "He has an opportunity with a friend in San Diego. Something about a food truck venture with fusion cuisine." "He abandoned the restaurant." "He said there was no point trying to save something that was already destroyed," Dad replied. "He said it was better to cut losses and start fresh somewhere with less competition." I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. He walked away just like that. "Tyler needs space to recover from this disappointment," Mom said defensively. "Starting over somewhere new will give him a chance to apply everything he learned here." I wanted to scream. Tyler had not learned anything. He had repeated every mistake from his previous ventures, added new ones, and when the consequences became unavoidable, he had simply left town. Meanwhile, my parents were facing the loss of their home. What about the restaurant, the equipment, the lease, the remaining obligations? "The landlord terminated the lease for non-payment," Dad said. "The equipment was repossessed. There are still some outstanding debts to suppliers and contractors." "How much do you owe in total?" Another long pause. "Beyond the mortgage payments, probably another $30,000. $41,000. Plus ongoing monthly mortgage payments they could not afford because they had refinanced to a higher monthly amount. On Dad's reduced pension and Mom's part-time retail job, they were bringing in maybe $3,000 per month. Their mortgage payment was now $2,800. The math was simple and brutal. They were financially ruined. "We are going to lose the house," Mom said, finally voicing what we were all thinking. "What did the bank say when you explained the situation?" "They suggested we contact family members who might be able to help with payments," Dad replied. And suddenly I understood why Jessica Martinez had called me. That night, I drove past the abandoned Harvest Kitchen location. The windows were dark, and eviction notices were taped to the front door. Someone had broken one of the front windows, and graffiti covered the brick wall beside the entrance. The beautiful architectural plans Tyler had shown me 6 months ago had become a monument to reckless ambition and family devastation. I sat in my car across the street trying to understand how my parents had allowed this to happen. They were intelligent people who had managed money responsibly their entire adult lives. They had raised 2 children, paid off a mortgage once already, and saved diligently for retirement. But Tyler had a gift for making his dreams sound not just possible but inevitable. He spoke with such conviction, painted such vivid pictures of success, that practical concerns seemed petty and pessimistic. My parents had wanted to believe in their son so desperately that they had ignored every red flag. Now they were facing homelessness while Tyler started fresh in California, probably already spinning stories about the impossible circumstances that had doomed his Michigan restaurant and the amazing opportunities waiting in San Diego. 2 weeks later, I got my first desperate phone call asking me to save them. But I was still discovering just how deep Tyler's betrayal ran. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing patient charts. Mom's voice was tight with panic, and she spoke so fast I could barely follow her words. "Darby, we need to talk to you tonight. This is urgent. We are coming over after dinner whether you are available or not. This cannot wait any longer." I had been dreading this conversation for weeks, ever since learning about the mortgage default. I knew what they wanted, and I knew what my answer would be, but the actual confrontation felt like standing in front of an approaching train. They arrived at my townhouse at 7:30, letting themselves in with the spare key I had given them years ago for emergencies. Dad carried a manila folder thick with documents, while Mom clutched her purse like a shield. "We need your help," Mom said without preamble, settling onto my couch with the entitled confidence of someone accustomed to getting their way. "The bank has given us 2 weeks to bring the mortgage current, or they begin foreclosure proceedings. We calculated how much you could get if you sold this place," Dad added, gesturing around my living room. The market is strong right now. You should be able to clear at least $60,000 after closing costs. I stared at them momentarily speechless. They had not asked for my help. They had not explained their situation or requested advice. They had calculated the value of my home and decided how to spend my money. You want me to sell my house to pay your mortgage? We want you to help your family, Mom corrected. This is what families do. We support each other in times of crisis. The same way you supported me during college by using my education fund for Tyler's catering business. The room fell silent. Dad shifted uncomfortably and Mom's face flushed red. That was different, she said finally. Tyler needed startup capital and you were already getting student loans. We were planning to replace that money. But you never did replace it, and you never told me it existed in the first place. That is ancient history, Dad interrupted. Right now we are facing immediate homelessness. You have equity in this house. You could find an apartment temporarily help us get back on our feet, and then rebuild your own situation. The casualness with which he dismissed 20 years of my housing progress made me feel physically sick. I had saved for 5 years to afford the down payment on this townhouse. I had furnished it, carefully planted a garden, built relationships with neighbors. It was not just an asset to be liquidated. It was my home. What about Tyler? Has he offered to help? Another uncomfortable silence. Tyler is in a difficult position right now, Mom said carefully. Starting over in California requires all his available resources. He cannot help until his new venture gets established. I pulled out my phone and opened Tyler's Instagram account, which I had started following after the restaurant closed. His most recent post showed him at a beachfront restaurant in La Jolla, raising a glass of wine to the camera. New beginnings in paradise, the caption read. This was posted yesterday. I said, turning the phone toward my parents. Look at that restaurant. Look at those clothes. Does this look like someone struggling financially? Dad squinted at the screen. Social media does not tell the whole story. Tyler is probably staying with friends, making the best of a difficult situation. But I had been scrolling through Tyler's recent posts during sleepless nights, trying to understand my brother's psychology. Expensive restaurants, beach clubs, a rental car that cost more per day than I spent on groceries per week. Either he was living on credit cards, or he had money he was not sharing with our parents. Have you actually asked Tyler for financial help? We do not want to burden him when he is trying to rebuild his life, Mom said. But you are comfortable burdening me. You have a stable job and secure housing, Dad replied. Tyler lost everything in the restaurant failure. You still have options. The inequality of their expectations was staggering. Tyler's failure earned him sympathy and support. My success earned me obligation and guilt. I also worked 2 jobs through college while Tyler partied, I said. I spent my 20s paying off student loans while Tyler received family financial support. I saved money by driving used cars and living with roommates while Tyler got help with down payments and business investments. Now you want me to give up the security I built myself to clean up the mess he created. This is not about Tyler, Mom said impatiently. This is about us. We are your parents. We raised you, supported you, gave you a foundation to build your life on. You owe us something. What exactly do I owe you? The education fund you spent on Tyler's business, the college support you gave him but not me, the belief and encouragement you invested in his dreams while treating my career as a backup plan. Dad's face darkened. We have always been proud of your work, Darby. But Tyler has vision ambition. He takes risks to build something meaningful. You chose a safe path. I chose a path that helps children and supports myself without depending on family bailouts. And that path has given you enough security to help us now, Mom said. We are not asking you to sacrifice your future. We are asking you to temporarily adjust your living situation to help family. Temporarily? As if selling my house and starting over in my late 20s was a minor inconvenience rather than a catastrophic disruption to my life plans. What if I say no? My parents looked at each other and I saw something cold pass between them. Then you will have to live with the consequences of that choice, Dad said slowly. We have given you every opportunity to do the right thing. If you choose selfishness over family loyalty, that says something about your character that we will have to accept. Are you threatening to cut contact with me? We are not threatening anything, Mom said. We are simply telling you that families either stick together or they fall apart. If you abandon us when we need you most, then maybe we do not have the relationship we thought we did. The manipulation was so transparent, it made me dizzy. They were reframing their demand as a test of my love, their financial crisis, as my moral responsibility, their disappointment in my refusal as evidence of my fundamental selfishness. As they continued arguing their case, my phone buzzed with a text message. Tyler, Mom and Dad said you were being stubborn about helping them. What is wrong with you? They lost everything because they believed in me, and now you will not even help them keep their home. I never thought my own sister would be so heartless. I stared at the message, feeling the last piece of the puzzle click into place. Tyler texted me, I said, holding up my phone. He says you told him I am refusing to help. We thought maybe he could talk sense into you, Dad admitted. You told him about my finances, about the value of my house. We told him you were in a position to help but seemed reluctant, Mom said defensively. I opened my phone's message history with Tyler and scrolled back through months of sporadic communication. Then I found what I was looking for. Tyler sent me this message in January, I said, reading from the screen. He said he heard from you that I inherited money from Great Aunt Rose, and he was disappointed I had not offered to invest in the restaurant. You told him I inherited $25,000. My parents went very still. Great Aunt Rose left me her china set and $50, I continued. There was no inheritance. Why did you tell Tyler I had money that I never received? There was some confusion about the will, Mom said weakly. You lied to both of us. You told Tyler I was selfishly hoarding inheritance money so he would blame me for not investing. You told me nothing about his repeated requests for my help, so I would not know how much you were encouraging his dependence on family money. The pattern was becoming clear. My parents had not simply enabled Tyler's failures. They had actively manipulated both of their children, creating resentment and competition that served their need to maintain Tyler as the golden child, while positioning me as the responsible backup plan. You have been planning this for months, I realized. You knew the restaurant would probably fail, but you told Tyler I would help cover the losses if needed. That is why he kept expanding operations instead of cutting costs. He thought he had family money as a safety net. We hoped you would want to help, Dad said quietly. You set me up. You made promises about my money without asking me. Let Tyler make business decisions based on those promises, and now you are demanding I honor commitments I never made. As I sat there looking at my parents, I felt the last of my childhood illusions crumble. They had not simply favored Tyler over me. They had orchestrated a system where Tyler received support and opportunities while I received expectations and obligations, where Tyler's needs justified any sacrifice while my needs were dismissed as selfishness. I'm not selling my house, I said firmly. Then you are choosing to let your family become homeless, Mom replied. No, I am choosing not to enable the same pattern that destroyed Tyler's restaurant and your financial security. I am choosing not to teach Tyler that family members exist to subsidize his poor decisions. I am choosing not to sacrifice my future for his failures. They left that night angry and disappointed, but not surprised. I think they had known all along that I might refuse. That was why they had spent months preparing Tyler to blame me for the outcome. As I locked the door behind them and changed my security code, I realized this was not really about money. It was about power control and the family mythology that painted Tyler as the dreamer who deserved endless chances and me as the worker who owed endless service. But I was done serving. 2 days later, I blocked both my parents' phone numbers and returned their spare key by mail. Going no contact with my family was the hardest decision I had ever made, but it was also the first decision I had made purely for my own well-being in 28 years. I had no idea that Tyler's betrayal of our parents was far worse than any of us imagined. The first week of no contact was the hardest. My phone felt heavy with phantom vibrations, and I caught myself checking for messages that would never come. I had blocked my parents' numbers, but that did not stop me from wondering what they were saying about me, whether they were safe, if Dad's blood pressure was spiking from stress. Dr. Sarah Lynn, the therapist I had started seeing at my friend Kate's recommendation, helped me understand that this guilt was programmed, not natural. You have been trained since childhood to prioritize their emotions over your own well-being, she explained during our second session. When they are upset, you feel responsible for fixing it. When they are disappointed, you feel guilty for causing it. That conditioning does not disappear overnight. Her office was warm and comfortable, decorated with soft blues and greens that made me feel calmer than I had in months. Dr. Lynn was a petite woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a direct manner that cut through my tendency to minimize my own pain. "Tell me about your earliest memory of feeling responsible for your family's emotions," she said. I thought back to childhood searching for a specific moment, but realized it was more like an atmosphere than an event. Tyler was always getting into trouble or having meltdowns about something. When he was upset, everyone was upset. I learned that if I could make Tyler happy, the whole house felt peaceful. And when you were upset, I learned to handle it myself. My problems seemed smaller than his, so it felt selfish to ask for attention. Dr. Lynn nodded. Children develop these coping strategies to survive emotionally chaotic environments. You became the family stabilizer, the one who absorbs stress rather than creates it. But those strategies that protected you as a child can harm you as an adult. She was right. I had spent so many years managing other people's emotions that I barely recognized my own anymore. When my parents demanded I sell my house, my first instinct had been to find a way to say yes, rather than to examine whether their demand was reasonable. What would happen if you stopped taking responsibility for their feelings? Dr. Lynn asked. They would be angry. They would blame me for their problems. And then what? I considered this. They would either learn to solve their own problems or they would not. But their feelings would be their responsibility to manage, not yours. The concept was simple but revolutionary. I had never considered that my parents' emotions belonged to them, not to me. Outside of therapy, I started rebuilding my life around choices that served my own well-being. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for when family obligations consumed my weekends. I signed up for a pottery class, started reading novels again, and began cooking elaborate meals just for myself. At work, my colleagues noticed the change immediately. "You seem different," said Janet, the nurse practitioner who worked the station next to mine. "More relaxed somehow." I made some changes in my personal life, I told her. "Good changes, I hope." "Difficult but necessary changes." Janet nodded knowingly. "Those are usually the most important ones." My supervisor, Dr. Patricia Williams, called me into her office one afternoon in May. "I have some news that might interest you," she said, gesturing for me to sit down. "The head nurse practitioner position is opening up in September. Linda is moving to Phoenix to be closer to her grandchildren. I think you would be an excellent candidate." The promotion meant a $15,000 salary increase, better benefits, and leadership responsibilities I had been hoping for since starting at Children's Hospital 3 years ago. It also required stability and long-term commitment to the position. "I would love to apply," I said. "The board will want to see evidence of community involvement and professional development. Are you planning any continuing education?" I thought about the conferences I had wanted to attend, but had skipped to save money for family emergencies that somehow always involved Tyler's latest crisis. "I would like to pursue the Pediatric Emergency Medicine certification," I said. "There are intensive programs available this summer." "Excellent. Submit your formal application by July 1st, and we will schedule interviews in August." Walking home from work that evening, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time in my adult life, I was making decisions based entirely on my own goals and interests. No one was asking me to postpone my ambitions for someone else's emergency. No one was questioning whether my dreams were worth pursuing. That was when I met Marcus. He was sitting on a bench outside the coffee shop near my house, reading a thick textbook and taking notes. Late 20s, sandy brown hair, wearing scrubs similar to mine but with a different hospital logo. "Studying for boards?" I asked as I walked past. He looked up and smiled a warm expression that reached his eyes. "Physical therapy licensing exam." Third time through this particular chapter, and it is finally starting to make sense. I did my nurse practitioner boards last year. The repetition is brutal, but it works. "Marcus Johnson," he said, extending his hand. "I work at the VA hospital downtown." "Darby Chen, Children's Hospital. What specialty?" "Amputee rehabilitation and prosthetics. Mostly veterans, but we see some civilian patients too." We talked for 20 minutes about our work, the challenges of healthcare bureaucracy, and the rewarding moments that made difficult days worthwhile. Marcus had an easy laugh and a genuine interest in other people that made conversation feel natural and comfortable. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked as I prepared to continue home. I promised to talk about something other than medical terminology. "I would like that." Our first date was a simple dinner at a farm-to-table restaurant that had nothing in common with Tyler's failed venture except fresh ingredients. Marcus was easy to be with, asking thoughtful questions and sharing stories from his work with wounded veterans. He had served 2 tours in Afghanistan before returning to college for his physical therapy degree. "What made you choose pediatric nursing?" he asked. "Children are honest about their pain," I said. "Adults often hide what they are feeling, but kids tell you exactly what hurts and where. It makes the job clearer somehow." "I can understand that. Working with amputees requires a lot of emotional honesty too. You cannot pretend that losing a limb is not devastating, but you also cannot let that devastation define your entire future." As spring turned to summer, Marcus became a consistent presence in my life. We hiked together on weekends, shared cooking duties at my house, and fell into an easy routine that felt healthy and balanced. He never pressured me to discuss my family situation, but when I finally told him about going no contact with my parents, his response was immediate and supportive. "That must have been incredibly difficult," he said. "Family loyalty is supposed to work both ways. It sounds like you were doing all the giving while they did all the taking." Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. "Do you feel better now than you did 6 months ago?" I considered this honestly. "Yes, I feel more like myself than I have in years." "Then you probably made the right choice." Marcus had his own complicated family history. His father had struggled with alcohol addiction throughout Marcus's childhood, and Marcus had learned early that loving someone did not mean enabling their destructive behaviors. "Setting boundaries is not punishment," he told me one evening as we sat on my back patio watching the sunset. "It is protection. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is refuse to participate in their self-destruction." In July, I submitted my application for the head nurse practitioner position. My continuing education credits were up to date, my patient satisfaction scores were excellent, and my colleagues had written glowing recommendation letters. For the first time in my career, I was pursuing an opportunity without wondering how it might affect someone else's plans. I also realized I had not thought about Tyler's situation in weeks. My parents' crisis had become background noise rather than constant anxiety. I was sleeping better, laughing more, and making plans for my own future. That was when Aunt Linda called. "Darby, honey, I need to talk to you about your parents," she said, without preamble. Linda was my mother's younger sister, a practical woman who had never been impressed by Tyler's schemes or my parents' enabling behaviors. "I am not changing my mind about helping financially," I said immediately. "This is not about money. This is about lies. Your parents have been telling the family that you abandoned them out of selfishness, that you refused to help when they were facing homelessness because you wanted to keep your money for yourself." My stomach dropped. "What exactly are they saying?" "They told everyone that Tyler begged you to invest in the restaurant, but you refused because you thought it would fail. They said Tyler asked you for a small loan to cover some unexpected expenses, and you told him family should not mix with business. They are painting you as someone who values money over family loyalty. None of that is true. Tyler never asked me to invest, and I was never told about any loan requests. I figured there was another side to this story. Your parents have always had selective memories when it comes to Tyler's behavior. But the family is planning an intervention. They want to get everyone together to convince you to reconcile and help with the foreclosure. An intervention. As if I were the one with the problem. Who is planning this? Your cousins Jenny and Mark, Uncle Bill, your grandmother. They are all convinced that you are being stubborn and heartless. They think if enough family members explain how wrong you are, you will apologize and open your checkbook. I closed my eyes, imagining that scene. A room full of relatives lecturing me about family loyalty, while knowing nothing about the financial manipulation, the lies, or the years of favoritism that had led to this crisis. Are you going to tell them the truth? I asked. I am going to tell them that family situations are more complicated than they appear, and that judging someone based on one side of the story is unfair. But I cannot force them to listen. After hanging up, I sat in my living room feeling the walls of my new life closing in. Even in silence, my family was controlling the narrative, making me the villain in a story where I was actually the victim. They were recruiting extended family members to pressure me into compliance using guilt and social manipulation to achieve what direct demands had failed to accomplish. But for the first time, I felt ready to face them. 3 months of therapy, career success, and a healthy relationship had given me something I had never had before: confidence in my own worth and judgment. I knew the truth about my family's financial crisis. I knew the pattern of manipulation that had created it. And I knew that my refusal to participate was not selfishness, but self-preservation. If they wanted a confrontation, I was finally strong enough to handle one. I had no idea that Tyler's latest betrayal would make the intervention unnecessary, or that my parents would soon discover what real abandonment looked like. The doorbell rang on a Saturday morning in early August, jarring me awake from the lazy sleep of a day off. Marcus was in the shower after our morning run, and I was still in my pajamas, planning to spend the day reading and catching up on household projects. I looked through the peephole and felt my blood turn to ice. Mom and Dad stood on my front porch, looking smaller and more fragile than I remembered. They each carried a large suitcase, and Dad had a cardboard box tucked under his arm. Mom's auburn hair had more gray in it than I remembered, and Dad's khaki pants hung loose on his diminished frame. But they were not alone. A young woman with bleached blonde hair and too much makeup stood slightly behind them, also carrying luggage. She wore designer jeans and a halter top that looked expensive, and she was checking her phone with obvious impatience. I opened the door, but did not step aside to let them in. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk to you." Mom said, her voice a mixture of desperation and entitlement. "The foreclosure went through. We lost the house yesterday." "I am sorry to hear that." And I was sorry despite everything. Seeing my parents homeless was painful, even though it was the inevitable result of choices they had made against my explicit warnings. "We have nowhere else to go," Dad said. "We have been sleeping in the car for 3 nights. We need a place to stay while we figure out our next steps." The young woman stepped forward. "Are you going to make us stand on the porch forever? Tyler said his family was welcoming." "Tyler, of course." "You must be Amanda," I said. She brightened. "Tyler told you about me." "Yes, I am his girlfriend. We have been together for 4 months now. He is amazing, so creative and ambitious. He is going to be huge in the California food scene." Amanda looked to be in her early 20s, with the kind of wide-eyed optimism that Tyler attracted like a magnet. She reminded me of his ex-wife Susan at the same age, before years of Tyler's schemes had worn down her confidence and emptied their joint bank account. "And you are here because—" "Tyler is getting our place set up in San Diego," she explained. "He sent me ahead to spend some time with his family while he finalizes the business details. He said his parents would love to host me, and his sister would be excited to get to know me." I looked at my parents, who had the grace to appear embarrassed. "You brought Tyler's girlfriend here without asking me." "Amanda needed a place to stay for a few weeks," Mom said defensively. "Tyler thought it would be nice for you two to get acquainted." Tyler does not get to decide who lives in my house. But Dad was already pushing past me into the living room, setting down his box and looking around with proprietary interest. This is a nice place, Darby. You have done well for yourself. The casual assumption that they were welcome made my head spin. They had not asked if they could stay. They had not apologized for the months of silence or acknowledged that our relationship was fractured. They had simply arrived with luggage and expectations. You cannot stay here, I said firmly. We are family, Mom said, settling onto my couch as if she owned it. This is what family does in emergencies. Amanda was already exploring my kitchen, opening cabinets and checking the contents of my refrigerator. Wow, you are really health conscious. Tyler said his sister was kind of uptight about food. Do you have any regular soda? Amanda, please do not touch my things. She looked surprised. Tyler said you would take care of me while he gets everything ready. He promised your family was really close and supportive. The irony was staggering. Tyler had sent his girlfriend to live with the sister he had spent months badmouthing as selfish and heartless, expecting me to provide free housing for his romantic convenience while he established his next venture with stolen money. Where exactly is Tyler? I asked. San Diego, Amanda said immediately. He is working with investors on a food truck concept, fusion cuisine like Korean Mexican. He says the West Coast market is perfect for innovative dining concepts. And he sent you here instead of bringing you with him. Amanda's confidence wavered slightly. He said it would be better for me to wait here while he gets the business side organized. Investors do not like distractions during negotiations. I pulled out my phone and opened Tyler's Instagram account. His most recent post from the night before showed him at what appeared to be an expensive nightclub in downtown San Diego. He was wearing a designer shirt I had never seen before, and holding a cocktail that probably cost more than my parents spent on groceries in a week. Is this what negotiating with investors looks like? I asked, showing Amanda the screen. Her face fell as she recognized the club scene. He said he was having a business dinner at a nightclub at midnight. Dad squinted at the phone. Tyler is probably networking. Business relationships require social interaction. But I was scrolling through Tyler's recent posts and the pattern was obvious to anyone willing to see it. Expensive restaurants, beach resorts, shopping trips to high-end stores. Either he was living on credit cards that would soon max out, or he had money that he was not sharing with our homeless parents. When did you last talk to Tyler? I asked my parents. 2 weeks ago, Mom admitted. He said he was busy getting everything set up for the next phase of his career. Has he offered to help you financially since the foreclosure? Another uncomfortable pause. Tyler is in startup mode, Dad said. All his resources are tied up in business development. I scrolled back through 2 months of Tyler's Instagram posts, documenting a lifestyle that contradicted everything my parents believed about his situation. Beach house rentals, expensive dinners, shopping trips, luxury car service. The timestamps showed he had been living this way since April while our parents were facing foreclosure and begging me to sell my house. Look at these posts, I said, handing the phone to Mom. Look at the dates. Tyler has been living like a millionaire for 4 months while you lost your home. Mom studied the screen, her face growing pale. These do not mean anything. Social media is not real life. Look at the location tags, Mom. Look at the restaurants and hotels. Look at what he is wearing. This is not someone who is struggling financially. Amanda grabbed the phone and began scrolling frantically. These are from last month, and this one from 3 weeks ago. Tyler told me he was staying in a cheap motel and eating ramen noodles to save money. Tyler tells people what they want to hear, I said gently. He always has. But Amanda was reading the captions on Tyler's posts, and her expression was changing from confusion to anger. He has been at the beach every day this week. He posted about a wine tasting yesterday that cost $200 per person. He bought a surfboard 3 days ago. Those posts are probably from before the restaurant closed, Dad said weakly. Dad, they are time-stamped. Look at the dates yourself. As my parents examined the evidence of Tyler's deception, I saw something break behind their eyes. For the first time in Tyler's life, they could not rationalize away his behavior or reframe his selfishness as misunderstood ambition. He left us homeless while he was living in luxury, Mom whispered. Not just homeless, I said. He stole money from you. Look at this post from May 10th. The photo showed Tyler standing next to a bright red convertible with California license plates. The caption read, "New ride for the new adventure. Sometimes you have to invest in the image to attract the opportunities." He bought a car, Amanda said slowly. A $60,000 car. Where did he get $60,000? I looked at my parents, waiting for them to connect the dots. The restaurant accounts, Dad said finally. Tyler had access to all the business checking accounts. We never monitored them because we trusted him to manage the finances responsibly. How much money went through those accounts? The original loan plus the refinancing money plus daily revenue from January through March, Mom calculated, maybe $300,000 total. And Tyler controlled all of it. He said it was important for business credibility to have the owner handle all financial transactions, Dad replied. I felt sick. Tyler had not just abandoned a failing business. He had systematically stolen money from accounts that belonged to my parents, money they had borrowed against their home money they would have to repay, even though they would never see it again. He planned this, I realized. Tyler knew the restaurant would fail from the beginning. He used it as a way to get access to large amounts of money, then disappeared before anyone could trace where the funds went. Amanda was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. He told me he was getting everything ready for us to start our life together. He said his family had money and would help him get established. Tyler does not have family money, I said. He has stolen money, and when it runs out, he will move on to the next scheme with the next girlfriend in the next city. As the full scope of Tyler's betrayal became clear, I watched my parents age 10 years in 10 minutes. The golden child they had sacrificed everything to support had not just failed. He had stolen from them, lied to them, and abandoned them to face the consequences of his crimes. We need to call the police, Mom said quietly. Tyler is your son, Dad protested automatically. Tyler is a criminal who stole our life savings and left us homeless, Mom replied. Son or no son, he needs to face consequences for what he has done. Amanda was still staring at Tyler's Instagram posts, trying to reconcile the boyfriend she thought she knew with the evidence of his deception. He told me you guys were being unreasonable about money, that you did not understand his vision. He said Darby was jealous of his success and trying to turn the family against him. Tyler has been lying to all of us, I said. That was when I heard Marcus's footsteps on the stairs and everything was about to change again. Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, his hair still damp from the shower, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. He paused when he saw the crowded living room, taking in the luggage, the tearful young woman, and my parents' shocked expressions. Sorry, I did not realize we had company, he said, coming down the rest of the stairs with the easy confidence that had first attracted me to him. But the moment my parents saw him clearly, their faces went white. Marcus, Dad said weakly. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, Marcus replied politely. It has been a while. I watched my parents' expressions change from surprise to recognition to something approaching horror. They remembered Marcus all right. They remembered him from the Christmas dinner 2 years ago when I had brought him home to meet the family for the first time. That dinner had been a disaster. Marcus was a decorated veteran who had lost his left leg below the knee to an improvised explosive device during his second tour in Afghanistan. He walked with a prosthetic limb and a barely noticeable limp, but to my parents, the disability had been all they could see. Dad had spent the entire evening making awkward comments about the challenges of dating someone with special needs. Mom had cornered me in the kitchen to ask if I was sure about getting involved with someone who had limitations. They had both suggested with painful transparency that Marcus was not good enough for me and that I was settling out of misplaced sympathy. Tyler had been even worse, making crude jokes about damaged goods and asking loudly whether Marcus could perform normally in various physical situations. When Marcus had politely excused himself to the bathroom, Tyler had told me I was too young to tie myself down to someone with problems. I had been mortified by my family's behavior, but Marcus had handled their ignorance and prejudice with grace and dignity. He had not argued or defended himself. He had simply observed their true characters and made mental notes about the people who mattered to me. We had left early, and I had apologized profusely during the drive home. "You do not need to apologize for them," Marcus had said. "But you should probably think about whether you want those attitudes in your life long term." That conversation had planted the first seeds of my eventual decision to distance myself from my family's toxic dynamics. Now, as Marcus stood in my living room, I realized how much he had changed since that awful dinner. He carried himself with quiet confidence, his successful career and hard-earned wisdom evident in every gesture. He had built a meaningful life helping other veterans overcome injuries and trauma, earning respect and admiration from colleagues and patients alike. Meanwhile, my parents looked exactly like what they were: two people who had made terrible financial decisions, enabled their manipulative son, and lost everything they had spent decades building. "Marcus lives here now," I said, watching my parents process this information. "You are living together?" Mom asked faintly. "We got engaged 3 months ago," Marcus said, moving to stand beside me and placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "I moved in last month." Dad stared at Marcus as if seeing a ghost. "But we thought, after Christmas dinner, we assumed—" "You assumed I was not good enough for your daughter," Marcus said calmly. "You made that quite clear." Amanda looked confused by the sudden tension in the room. "Is there some history here?" "Marcus is a veteran," I explained. "He lost part of his leg in Afghanistan. My family treated him badly because of his disability." "We were concerned," Mom said defensively. "We wanted what was best for Darby." "You wanted what looked best," Marcus corrected. "You judged me based on my injury rather than my character. You decided I was damaged goods without knowing anything about my life or my accomplishments." The irony of the situation was not lost on any of us. My parents had rejected Marcus because they thought he was not successful enough for me. Now they were homeless and desperate, while Marcus owned his own home, had a thriving career, and was financially stable enough to support the woman he loved. "What do you do for work now?" Dad asked reluctantly. "I am the director of prosthetics and rehabilitation at the VA hospital," Marcus replied. "I also run a nonprofit organization that provides adaptive sports equipment to wounded veterans. And I am a part-time paralegal working with a firm that specializes in elder financial abuse cases." The last part made my parents exchange nervous glances. "Financial abuse?" Mom asked. "Cases where family members exploit elderly relatives financially," Marcus explained. "Elder abuse, fraud, theft by family members with financial power of attorney. It is unfortunately more common than most people realize." I had not known about Marcus's legal work until recently, when he had mentioned helping a client whose son had stolen her retirement savings to fund a failed business venture. The parallels to my family's situation had been obvious, but I had not discussed the details of my parents' crisis with Marcus. "In fact," Marcus continued, "I have been helping Darby research legal options regarding Tyler's theft from your restaurant accounts." "Legal options," Dad repeated. "Financial elder abuse is a serious crime," Marcus said. "When an adult child gains access to parental assets and misuses those funds for personal benefit, it constitutes theft regardless of the family relationship. The fact that Tyler used stolen money to finance a luxury lifestyle while leaving his parents homeless makes the case particularly strong." Amanda was listening to this conversation with growing alarm. "Tyler stole money from his parents." "According to the Instagram post you were looking at, Tyler spent the summer living an expensive lifestyle while his parents faced foreclosure," Marcus said. "That money came from somewhere. Business accounts that were supposed to fund restaurant operations but instead funded Tyler's personal expenses." "We trusted him," Mom said quietly. "Trust does not change the legal definition of theft," Marcus replied. "Adult children do not have the right to appropriate parental assets even in financial emergencies, especially when those children are using the money for personal luxury rather than family support." I watched my parents struggle with this information. They had been so focused on Tyler as their golden child, so invested in protecting his reputation and excusing his failures, that they had never considered holding him legally accountable for his crimes. "You could press charges," I said. "Tyler stole from you. He left you homeless while living in luxury with money he took from your business accounts." "He is our son," Dad protested weakly. "He is also a thief who destroyed your financial security," Marcus pointed out. "Family relationship does not exempt someone from legal consequences for criminal behavior." Amanda was quietly crying again, her romantic illusions about Tyler crumbling as she understood the scope of his deception. "He told me his family was successful and supportive. He said they would help us get started in California." "Tyler tells people what they want to hear," I said gently. "He has been manipulating all of us for years." As my parents sat in my living room surrounded by their few remaining possessions, I saw them truly see Tyler for the first time. Not as the misunderstood dreamer they had spent decades enabling, but as the selfish criminal he had always been. And they also saw Marcus clearly for the first time. Not as the disabled veteran they had dismissed as unworthy, but as the accomplished, principled man who had won their daughter's heart through kindness, honesty, and genuine success. "We owe you an apology," Mom said to Marcus, her voice barely audible. "We judged you unfairly." "You judged me based on fear and ignorance," Marcus replied. "But more importantly, you hurt Darby by questioning her judgment and making her feel ashamed of caring about me." Dad cleared his throat. "We made mistakes. About Tyler, about you, about how we treated Darby. We let our hopes for Tyler blind us to his problems, and we let our fears about Marcus blind us to his qualities." "Acknowledgement is a start," Marcus said, "but apologies need to be backed up by changed behavior." It was the first time in my life I had ever heard my parents take responsibility for their mistakes without immediately making excuses or shifting blame. The complete collapse of their illusions about Tyler seemed to have shattered their ability to maintain comfortable lies about anything else. "What happens now?" Amanda asked. "Now you all need to figure out how to rebuild your lives without depending on Tyler," I said. "And my parents need to decide whether they want justice or continued enablement." As I looked around my living room at the wreckage of my family's delusions, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The truth was finally out in the open, painful but liberating. But the real test was still to come. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen preparing Thanksgiving dinner, watching Marcus arrange flowers in the centerpiece we had chosen together. The morning sun streamed through windows that now belonged to both of us, illuminating the engagement photos we had displayed on the mantelpiece and the life we had built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. "Are you nervous about today?" Marcus asked, adjusting the final stems of the autumn arrangement. "A little," I admitted. "This is the first time we have all been in the same room since that day in August." So much had changed since my parents showed up on my doorstep homeless and desperate. Tyler had been arrested in San Diego 3 weeks after that confrontation. The legal case Marcus had helped me research proved solid, and when my parents finally decided to press charges, the FBI had tracked Tyler through credit card records, bank transfers, and social media posts that documented his spending of stolen funds. He was currently serving 18 months in federal prison for wire fraud and elder financial abuse. Amanda had returned to her hometown in Ohio wiser and sadder but free from Tyler's manipulation. She had sent me a thank you card last month saying that meeting me had helped her recognize the warning signs of emotional and financial abuse in future relationships. My parents had faced the devastating reality of starting over in their 60s. The house was gone along with most of their retirement savings. Dad had found work at a hardware store while Mom took a job at a department store. They rented a small 2-bedroom apartment across town furnished with donated items and yard sale finds. But something fundamental had shifted in their understanding of family dynamics and personal responsibility. "We enabled Tyler his entire life," Mom had said during one of our carefully structured family therapy sessions with Dr. Lin. "We told ourselves we were being supportive, but we were actually preventing him from learning consequences. We made excuses for behavior that we should have addressed directly." Dad had been slower to accept accountability, but even he eventually acknowledged the pattern. We expected different things from our children based on gender stereotypes and personality preferences. We demanded that Darby be responsible and self-sufficient while allowing Tyler to be reckless and dependent. That was not fair to either of them. The therapy sessions had been difficult but necessary. My parents had to confront not only their financial mistakes, but also the decades of emotional manipulation and favoritism that had damaged both their children. They had to accept that Tyler's criminal behavior was the inevitable result of a lifetime without meaningful consequences, and that my decision to go no contact had been self-preservation, not selfishness. For my part, I had to learn to separate my parents' genuine remorse from my trained response to their emotions. Just because they were sorry did not mean I was obligated to immediately forgive or forget. Trust had to be rebuilt slowly through consistent actions, not just words. Darby has every right to maintain boundaries with us, Mom had said during one session. We spent years prioritizing Tyler's wants over her needs. We used emotional manipulation to get our way. We lied to her about family finances and made demands about her money without considering her feelings. She does not owe us anything just because we are family. It was the first time in my life I had heard either parent acknowledge that family relationship alone did not justify unlimited access to my time, money, or emotional energy. The legal case against Tyler had forced my parents to face the full scope of his betrayal. Beyond the restaurant, theft investigators discovered that Tyler had been forging Dad's signature on credit card applications for years, maxing out accounts, and then claiming identity theft when bills came due. He had stolen Mom's jewelry to pay gambling debts, replacing real pieces with cheap imitations that they had never noticed. He had even sold Dad's vintage baseball card collection without permission, telling them it had been lost in a basement flood that never happened. Tyler has been stealing from us for over 10 years, Dad had said after the investigation concluded. We kept making excuses for missing money and unexplained expenses. We wanted to believe his explanations more than we wanted to face the truth. The pattern of theft and lies went back to Tyler's high school years, meaning my parents had been unknowingly funding his dishonesty since before I left for college. Every family celebration, every show of support, every proud moment had been built on money Tyler had stolen from their savings, retirement accounts, and credit lines. Marcus had been instrumental in helping my parents navigate the legal system and understand their rights as crime victims. His experience with elder financial abuse cases meant he could explain complex procedures and advocate for fair treatment from prosecutors and victim services coordinators. Your parents are not the first people to be victimized by an adult child, he had told me. The psychological manipulation makes it especially difficult for victims to recognize abuse patterns or take legal action. Family loyalty gets weaponized against the very people who need protection. But Marcus had also been clear about boundaries and expectations for rebuilding our relationship. Darby does not owe you immediate forgiveness, he had told my parents directly. She does not owe you financial support or unlimited emotional labor. If you want a relationship with her, you need to earn it through consistent respect for her autonomy and boundaries. My parents had accepted these terms without argument, something that would have been impossible before Tyler's betrayal shattered their illusions about family dynamics. The promotion to head nurse practitioner had come through in September, along with the salary increase and leadership responsibilities I had been working toward for years. For the first time in my career, I was making professional decisions without considering how they might affect someone else's crisis or emergency. Marcus and I had married in a small ceremony in October, surrounded by friends and colleagues who genuinely supported our relationship. My parents had attended as invited guests, not as central figures demanding attention or special treatment. They had been respectful, grateful, and appropriate throughout the celebration. Thank you for including us, Mom had said at the reception. We know we do not deserve to be part of your happiness after how we treated both of you. This means everything to us. Now, as I put the turkey in the oven for our first Thanksgiving as a married couple, I heard the doorbell ring. That will be your parents, Marcus said. Are you ready for this? I think so. I opened the door to find Mom and Dad standing on the porch with a small bouquet of flowers and a homemade pumpkin pie. They looked older and more tired than I remembered, but also somehow lighter, as if shedding their illusions about Tyler had lifted a burden they had carried for decades. "Happy Thanksgiving," Mom said, offering me the flowers. "Thank you for inviting us." "Thank you for coming," I replied, stepping aside to let them enter. They moved carefully through my home, asking permission before sitting down, offering to help with cooking preparations, expressing genuine gratitude for every small kindness. The entitlement and assumption that had characterized their previous visit was completely gone. "How is work going?" Dad asked Marcus as we gathered in the living room. "Very well. We just received a grant to expand our adaptive sports program. Darby helped me write the application, actually. Her experience with pediatric care gave us insights into developmental approaches for younger amputees." My parents listened with genuine interest as Marcus described his work, asking thoughtful questions and expressing admiration for his accomplishments. The dismissive attitude they had shown 2 years ago had been replaced with respect and curiosity. "We are proud of both of you," Mom said. "Your careers, your marriage, the life you have built together. We should have seen how well matched you are from the beginning." Over dinner, we talked carefully about safe topics, work, community news, shared memories that did not involve Tyler. My parents followed my conversational lead, never pushing for more intimacy than I was comfortable offering, never making demands or assumptions about future holidays or family gatherings. "We heard from Tyler last week," Dad said carefully as we cleared the dinner dishes. "He called from prison." I tensed, waiting for them to ask me to forgive him or visit him or contribute money for his legal fees. "We told him we would not be accepting any more calls," Mom continued. "We explained that he needs to take responsibility for his choices and face the consequences without expecting family rescue." "How did he react to that?" "He was angry," Dad admitted. "He said we were abandoning him when he needed us most. He blamed us for pressing charges and claimed we were being vindictive." "But we realized that Tyler has never taken responsibility for anything in his life," Mom added. "Every failure was someone else's fault. Every consequence was unfair. Every expectation was unreasonable. We enabled that pattern by always providing rescue and excuses." "Prison might be the first real consequence Tyler has ever faced," Dad said. "Maybe it will force him to examine his behavior in a way that family support never did." As the evening wound down, my parents prepared to leave without any expectation of extended visits or regular contact. They thanked us repeatedly for the invitation, cleaned up their own dishes, and made no assumptions about future holidays or gatherings. "We hope you know how grateful we are," Mom said as they gathered their coats. "Not just for today, but for the boundaries you set and the lessons you taught us. We needed to lose everything to understand how much damage we had done." "We love you," Dad added, "both of you, and we respect whatever level of contact feels comfortable for you going forward." After they left, Marcus and I sat on the couch together, processing the day. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Cautiously optimistic," I said. "They seem genuinely changed, but I want to see if the behavior continues over time." "That sounds wise. Trauma and crisis can create temporary changes that do not always last." "What do you think?" Marcus considered this. "I think losing Tyler as their golden child forced them to confront truths they had been avoiding for decades. The question is whether they can maintain accountability without the external pressure of legal proceedings and family crisis." 6 months later, I could say with confidence that the changes were real and lasting. My parents had rebuilt their lives with dignity and hard work, never asking for financial help or emotional support beyond what I was willing to give. They sent birthday cards and holiday greetings, but never pressured me for visits or phone calls. They treated Marcus with genuine respect and gratitude, acknowledging both their past mistakes and his positive influence on my life. Tyler wrote letters from prison that started with apologies, but quickly devolved into blame and self-pity. I read the first few, then asked the prison to remove me from his correspondence list. Some relationships cannot be repaired, and some people are not capable of genuine change. But my parents had surprised me with their capacity for growth and accountability. They had faced devastating consequences for their enabling behavior and used those consequences to become better people and better parents. Standing in my kitchen that Thanksgiving evening, I felt something I had never experienced before: peace with my family situation. Not perfect harmony, but honest acceptance of what was possible and what was not. I had learned that saying no to people who take advantage of your love is not selfish, but necessary. Real family does not guilt you into sacrificing your future for their mistakes. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them face the consequences of their choices. My parents had to lose everything to find their way back to being actual parents, and I had to walk away to discover that I was worth fighting for all along. If you have ever felt like the responsible child in a family that demands endless sacrifice for the irresponsible one, know that your boundaries matter. Your dreams matter. Your financial security matters just as much as anyone else's. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? How did you handle the guilt and pressure that comes with setting boundaries with people you love? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help it reach others who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding strength in difficult situations. And please share this with someone who might benefit from knowing they are not alone in these struggles. Thank you for listening to my story and being part of this community, where we can talk honestly about family boundaries and the courage it takes to choose yourself when necessary. I hope your own journey toward healthy relationships brings you the peace and happiness you deserve.